if you've been on these calls, they're focused more on the elder care world, you know, and I really like the idea of sort of exploring this topic with Martha, because it does really address the ageism issue, which impacts all of us, especially those who are in the field of aging in senior services. So Martha, you are, unfortunately, and we're going to get a little story here, Martha is on the phone today. She is not with us live. So Martha, if you can unmute yourself and say something.
Hi, Steve.
Oh, great.
Hi.
All right.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, Martha. Well, first off, welcome. And you're in sunny California. I'm assuming it's sunny there because most of the time it is. But
yes.
But let's we'll get into the story of why people aren't seeing you and they're only hearing you today. But before we do that, let's get to know you a little bit better. I know from reading your bio that you're a professor. You've written several books, and this is your newest book. But give us a little bit of your background and what led you to writing this book.
Well, thank you again, Steve, for having me on for this very important discussion. And I come originally from advertising promotion industry. And after I left that industry and went into the educational field, I was teaching advertising and marketing primarily. And I became very interested over the 30 years, or actually I'd have to say 34 years of teaching the subject, in the way that women are portrayed in advertising, and in other words, gender representation of women in advertising, or media representation of women in advertising. And so I started back in those days. What did we do when we wanted to collect articles? We did clippings. We just did something like tear sheets. We didn't have, this wonderful resource hadn't been developed, the internet, to download everything. And I just had this huge and growing folder that included these articles. And I started tracking, to do monitoring to see whether or not women were portrayed differently as over time. For example, women are oftentimes portrayed as a caretaker, nothing wrong with this, caretaker, mother, because they're saying this, decorative sex or the sex pot. There are these very stock characters that you'll see in advertising, and really the needle had not moved much. So then I dove in very specifically at the beauty industry, looking at that industry in conjunction with gender representation advertising, and I saw some real glaring defects here in the way that the messaging is communicated to every one of the target audiences, and those audiences specifically are millennials, Generation X women mostly, as well as baby boomer women. And then finally, I decided it's time for me, after 30 years of research, to start writing a book on this. And that is basically the genesis of Main Up.
Great. So now what college do you teach at?
I teach at Diablo Valley College in Pleasant Hill, California. And if any of your attendees are familiar with the Bay Area, this would be northeast of San Francisco. So it's a suburb of the Bay Area in the East Bay.
Okay. Excellent. Now let's okay, so I know today the discussion was going to be on your book and ageism and beauty and what have you, but an interesting thing happened, because last week I received a call from your publicist that said, would it be okay if Martha call in instead of log in, because she's had an issue where she doesn't want, she can't be seen on camera. And I said, of course, you know, and but in the green room, I discovered what happened, and I'm hoping you can share with us what happens, because what happened to you that is putting you in this position, because that also intersects with ageism and what we commonly deal with in the elder care world. Do you mind sharing what happened to you?
Well, I am an aging baby boomer, just to provide your guests with a frame of reference. And I was doing errands and I took a spill, so it would be considered trip and fall, I gather, and fell forward. It's interesting. I didn't break anything, which is quite shocking, but I did incur a concussion and contusions. And the worst part of it, why I couldn't appear on video, is I look like I've done 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. I have a fairly significant laceration that required stitches, and you know, the whole area, one side of my face is black and blue and puffy. And when I was in the ER room being treated, the first question that was asked to me was basically if I was prone to dizziness and falling, you know, before anything else. Well, they asked for my ID and then they asked that question. And I'm not. So in some ways, I just felt like my age was being handicapped just based on the way that I look, that, you know, I look over the age of 40. And interestingly enough, just to segue to something else, when I got the stitches out yesterday, the medical assistant came in and she said, oh, she's maybe 20, I would say. Oh, I've almost tripped over that crack several times. Well, that led me to think to myself, well, I wonder if they would have asked her that question. I'm not sure.
And you know, you're speaking. I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that. And because two things. Number one, in our elder care world, oftentimes the entry point to the services that many of the people on the call provide is a fall. It's you're healthy and active one day, and then you have a fall, and all of a sudden your world is rocked, and all of a sudden you're looking at these services that you never imagined you'd be looking at. But the other thing that I'm glad that you shared is this tendency, this sort of ageist language that can occur, you know, where that, you know, again, we should be speaking to people equally, like you said. I mean, would a 20-year-old who was going over a fall be asked, are you prone to falls or not? And nobody is, the thing about ageism is nobody is doing this in a harmful way. They're being helpful, but it's just educating folks and helping people have a different level of empathy on this topic. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so now we know you, okay, and we can hear you. And so let's dive in to some of the insights that you discovered in writing this book. Oh, wait, before we jump into this book, you've written another book that intersects our world. Can you share with us that other book, and then we'll dive into the beauty industry over 50?
Sure. I wrote a book in 2014 titled The Con Game of Failure of Trust that took a hard look at the epidemic rise of elder abuse in America. And it explores different remedies for combating this problem. And one of the issues, of course, is when a older adult becomes vulnerable and can no longer make decisions for themselves. Very often a solution will be a conservatorship or guardianship. So I look very closely at what we often call the protection industry, and a look at the flaws in that system and ways that it can be improved.
Great, great. Well, and folks in the audience, like we've got a bunch of topics that we've thrown out on the plate. So don't feel like we've got to be specific to the beauty industry in your discussions and comments. That's one of the fun things about these, is that we can go in a variety of directions. Okay, so let's dive into this book. And if you can share with us some insights about the beauty industry and the impact on women, especially women who might be considered over a certain age.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So very typically, and I'm sure many of your guests who have seen any type of advertising on beauty products, and we can even include the area of cosmetic procedures now, because we're seeing that cosmetic surgery is the new makeup. That is a term that has been coined, but we see that the beauty industry through its messaging is promoting the notion that youth and beauty are advantageous physical traits, and they equate those traits to success and happiness. And so in your blurb, Steve, you included this phrase from my book: in societies that worship youth and beauty, the appearance of aging is often met with escalating disdain. So aging is almost seen as a disease that necessarily follows that the portrayal of those who are older as physically and cognitively declining, and we know that that is not true. Now, circling back to the beauty industry, how they target baby boomers in specific, we know that aging baby boomers are a growth driver in the industry, especially for anti-aging products. And so they seek products to look as youthful as they can. And as a result, some cosmetic companies will make the claim that anti-aging skincare will contain ingredients so powerful that they will perform wonders by communicating that it will reset the skin's aging clock. Now, we know who they're talking to when words like reset the aging clock are used. That's a claim that's being made, and it's being addressed to baby boomers. So basically, this idea of anti-aging, and frankly, I have a problem with that term anti-aging, again, as if aging is really a systemic problem, as if this idea that aging, that one can't age gracefully, or that aging is something to be avoided. Well, of course, the beauty industry is telling us, guess what? We have the products to keep you youthful, so you won't need to use that language. Well, I am older. In fact, when I was at the ER room, I said, well, I'm older now. And I found myself falling in the trap of making excuses for being older.
Yeah. And, this language that we use, and I say collectively we use, it's hard to break these habits. And it's like, we will all say, throw out terms like, well, I'm aging. Well, yes, because you're not anti-aging, okay? Which again, speaks to how, what a horrible term anti-aging is. It is,
yes.
If you are not aging, you're dead, okay? And it's interesting how billions of dollars are being spent on anti-aging products. And if people would just reflect on that term for a moment and what it really means.
Oh, yes. Anti-aging is increasingly a profitable segment of the skincare market. In fact, it's expected, I think, to go over by to reach about, I'm trying to remember, 330 billion in 2021, which is pretty astonishing given that the industry itself is expected to reach a market value of 805 billion by 2023. So you can see what an important segment that is.
Wow.
And guess
I
who is
had no,
targeted. Oh
yeah,
yeah, baby boomers.
I had no idea. So 300 million out of 800, out of 800 million, an 800 million, a billion industry is
Yeah.
anti-aging products.
Anti-aging, according to one source,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
always
yeah.
about who developed the stats itself. But yes, I mean, this market is a whole slew of products. Think about it: anti-wrinkle products, retinol products, anti-cellulite products. I already said retinol products. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
think, but basically all of them are generally pricier than creams that don't trumpet anti-aging properties. So you see where this is coming from,
Mm-hmm.
the profit motive, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. So there's sort of language that's in your face, like anti-aging, and we've all seen the ads for cosmetic surgery, the befores and afters and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. Again, the before saying that there's a problem with these wrinkles that you might have when they're natural. But you'd mentioned some language earlier in your statement about resetting, more subtle language that's not really in your face. It's a little more creative. Hats off to the marketing. Um, but uh, yeah, so now in your research on this topic, are there, we could talk at length about the challenges and the pressure that we feel um, in the beauty industry, but
Mm-hmm.
did you find any sort of rays of hope, like companies or individuals that are sort of addressing this issue and sort of be outside of the box?
Well, I will say that we are seeing more beauty companies now using some of the new faces in the industry are women over the age of 60. And I'm saying over the age of 60 because Gen X, their age range is 40 to 55. And so we know that for the beauty industry, basically the industry goes after, it's a term we use, but who their primary consumers are: millennial women, they're the new marketing darlings, 24 to 39, then Gen X, 40 to 55, and then baby boomers, 56 to 74. And they are important to market growth. But now I think some beauty companies are becoming age agnostic. And there's a reason for that, because of Americans are living longer with average life expectancies historically higher than ever before. And as a result of this, manufacturers need to figure out a way how to keep older consumers engaged and interested in beauty products, because according to statistics, the cosmetics use drops over the age of 50, but yet we're living longer, right? So we have this twin effect: living longer, consumers over the age of 50, their beauty cosmetic usage drops. So how do we mediate that? So we have to find a way of doing this. And one way is attempting for the beauty industry to make certain that they bring baby boomers back, because many of them are less brand loyal today as compared to their brand loyalty in the past, which was much higher. And so from a communication standpoint, the way that the beauty industry does this is to just the emphasis on image, youth, and beauty in the advertising is less persuasive, and they need to start talking to us very honestly by stressing the benefits of the product, as opposed to this product is going to make you look like you're 40, even though you're 75.
Yeah, yeah. And then see that just and I'm guilty of this too. It's sort of like um making statements like that we look like we're 40. Like, I mean, again, these can be ageist statements, but we're so used to doing it. It's so hard to break those habits. Couple of comments that Donna Powell shares, recently starting to see TV ads for Botox injections, and all the actors shown are hip, fashionable 30-somethings. Is that I've seen these as well, is that if you've got these young people, these young influential actors and actresses that are getting, taking Botox injections, in their sometimes 20s and 30s, that makes it really difficult to talk about some of these topics when we get even older.
Oh, yes, and that is such a great comment, because I've noticed that too. So the brand name Botox, when that first came out, they definitely were targeting baby boomers. And then you saw their messaging being directed to younger women, specifically Generation X, because they are exhibiting a desire to keep aging at arm's length. And those spend actually even more than baby boomers on preventative anti-aging regimes. So then we started to see more Gen Xers in the ads. And now we are seeing both male and female millennials in the ads. And this is called prejuvenation. 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 Yes, there's actually a word for it. And so basically the face of cosmetic surgery is getting younger. Many millennials under 30 are attempting to preserve their youth even before they get their first wrinkle. I'm sure many of the guests today, we're all talking together in a conversation, but I think that this is very disturbing.
Mm-hmm. No, it really is. Elva Roy, great to see you again, Elva, is that makes a comment. Anybody remember the 2002 book by Naomi Wolf, The Beauty Myth, How Images of Beauty Are Used Against Women? Did you come across that book in any of your research, Martha?
Oh yes, yes, that book, I've actually tapped that book. It's been around since around, I think, 1990. I don't have the publication date committed to memory, but yes, she's actually the book is cited in the body of my book, and I think it's in the chapter called The Myth Makers. And that chapter looks at gender stereotyping in advertising, and very carefully it looks at issues of the female objectification of women in advertising, again with a focus on the beauty industry, but the concepts apply in many different areas of marketing and advertising. So yes, that's an excellent book. And indeed, we have to remember that this is a beauty and fashion industry, and have promoted this ideal, again, and oftentimes it's the feminine beauty ideal, which is a social construct that says that we should value beauty or attractiveness as an asset over all other characteristics that a woman has. And this is really very much a part of the thrust of Naomi Wolf's book, The Beauty Myth. Excellent book.
Great. So the I think one of the good things here, and I want to kind of move our discussion towards what can be solutions in the future to sort of minimize this language and the stereotypes and things of that nature. But as we talk about women in general and beauty over all else, we've seen a lot of great movements recently in society. Yesterday, we had a lot of our talk was the crossroads of inclusion and discrimination, but for women in general, and I've got a young daughter, it's great to see the movement that empowers girls to study and take up what were normally male professions in the STEM categories and things of that nature. And the opportunities for women are better now than they've ever been. And these are good signs, you know, for our future. However, if that same cohort is also getting Botox and in their 20s, it makes it a lot more challenging for natural aging. But can you share with us any insights on things that could help sort of move the needle in the positive direction for us?
Well, we are actually seeing a trend, for example, of using more realistic images of women in advertising, both fashion. I mean, I don't want it to all sound gloom and doom. And when it comes to improving diversity and inclusion in the messaging, because we really are we're able to see it, but it's still pretty spotty. Today, actually, the watchwords for beauty and fashion brands are authenticity, beauty and substance, and not just in form. So we are seeing some evidence of this, especially, and you mentioned that you have a young daughter, and many advertisers that target their ads to a young female audience, like millennial women, I imagine your daughter may fall in that age category, have really haven't shifted gears, but they've added a new gear, and it's called aspirational authenticity. And this is advertising more relatable by mirroring the consumer's everyday reality. And part of this is promoting body diversity and inclusivity in beauty ads. And this can counterbalance messaging that systematically portrays this feminine ideal of beauty that we've been talking about today.
Great. That's great. I'm gonna I want to share part of Vic Hathaway's comment in chat, and she says, "I love what you're saying about how poisonous and pervasive the thinking is that aging is a bad thing. I don't want to dictate what any women choose to do. I just want to see it get better for women who choose to embrace aging and fly the flag. It's a good thing and something for which to be grateful, never more so than right now." What very well said.
Oh, beautifully said. Beautifully said.
And okay, sorry about
but
that.
You know, Steve, I really think we need to, though, drop euphemisms. I think we'll all agree to that for aging, right? We've got to find new language. And you had said this at the outset of our conversation. You know, words like old, seniors, elders, older. I just think for baby boomers, and most of us are seniors now, I mean, we just don't respond really well to those terms. And for example, I don't know if you've noticed, and you probably have, that some senior centers have now call themselves community centers now.
Yep.
So yeah, so this is good. There's a recognition that, and I just feel that this is really making a conscious effort to communicate to most of us who are in an age group. I mean, in fact, baby boomers say that they're in mid-youth. They don't say they're middle age, but this is definitely, as we're aging, I think we just need to be very sensitive, just like we're sensitive about issues of sexism, ageism, racism. We need to be more responsible, or advertisers or companies need to be, with the language they use that are directed to us as an audience.
Yeah, it very well said. And this was a theme from our ageism discussion yesterday, is that anytime you try to label a group as something, you're running into challenges. You know, we're all people, we're all humans. You know, the color of our skin, the look of our skin, our mobility issues. You know, anytime you sort of try to come up with a term that sort of groups those people together, you're no longer celebrating the individuality of folks. But as marketers, that's where things become very challenging. And one of the things that is, a lot of the people in our audience, we represent home care agencies and senior living communities and assisted living and various services that are targeted in general to an older demographic. And it's sort of like, how can we communicate that we are offering something without making people feel like they are signing up for the senior center? And you're dead on. It's sort of on that. There's been a lot of research done, and most of us have heard it every day. Oh, I'm not going to a senior center. Even though you qualify by age, the programs would be fun. You'd meet new people, but because you're segregating this group, instantly you've created a club that people don't want to join.
Yes, very. I mean, all so well said. And again, I think it really, I think that responsible marketers will, and I think AARP is actually doing a good job at this. Whoever does their marketing, I'm sure that they work with a very large agency, and oftentimes they'll do research to find out information about this. And this is the kind of research that you and many of your guests do. But I really think that if we think of, I'm sorry, I live very close to the train station, but ethical marketers will find a way of communicating to older Americans, for lack of better words, in a way that will resonate with them and not make it sound as if going to a senior center means that basically you're not the same person that you were before you stepped into a senior center, if that makes sense.
And Martha, if you want to mute real quick, I can read a comment from Elva on this topic that I think is very poignant. And Elva says, community center instead of senior center is not really descriptive of what it is. I have been very involved in getting a new $45 million world-class active senior center approved by the voters in my city. The consultants convinced the city to call it the Active Adult Center, but it is an age-restricted center, 50 plus. So AAC doesn't really describe what it is, as an active adult could be a 22-year-old. This is a wicked challenge.
Very interesting.
It's
wow.
how do you name things? And isn't it funny though? The active adult terminology is one that's used quite frequently in real estate, and we all sort of know that an active adult is somebody over the age of 55. That's code for an age segregated community. But Elton brings up a valid point. Well, hey, anybody over the age of 18 could be an active adult. And but this is a wicked problem. And the interesting thing, like the way, Elva, to address the community center versus senior center topic, in my community, there's a community center, and then within the community center, there are programs that are targeted towards older adults, but anybody could sign up for them, anybody over the age of 18. Now, the bulk of the people that participate in those programs are over a certain age because of the time of day they're offered and what have you, but they've come up with one solution. It's not the best, or it's just one solution to address the challenges that sometimes we face when we slap a label on something that this is exclusively for older adults. But great comments there, and interesting. So Donna mentions how important intergenerational connections are in these times, and that is true. We see, like yesterday we talked about ageist language, and somebody had suggested, is there a program to fight ageism that may utilize grandparents? And I've always sort of felt like grandparents are, I refer to them as a Trojan horse in terms of communicating. It, so no one will argue that the label of grandparent is a negative label. Most people are proud of being a grandparent. They wear it on their sleeve. The beauty of that is that I believe 75% of grandparents are over the age of 65, and I want to say not everybody is a grandparent. Okay, I think that stats say 75% of the population may be a grandparent at one point in time, but it's a way by communicating as a grandparent, you can communicate to older adults. I'm babbling. All right, Martha, we are moving towards the top of the hour here, and so I want to encourage the audience to jump in, guys. You can raise your hand and I'll bring you on, or you can type your comments in. Oh, and Karen Bruchet, I'm glad, Karen, that you're on this call, because she works at the community center that I was referring to, Reston Community Center, and she says the idea at Reston Community Center is that we shouldn't segregate ages. We all benefit from each other's wisdom and energy. And Reston Community Center, like many across the country, have come up with a creative way to do it. It's one model, and there's lots of others. And Elva, I'm charged up to, once your center gets up and going, I hope we could have you on to share how things are going with that. It sounds amazing. So Martha, any other, I know we've sort of taken a winding path here, but anything else in your book that you'd like to sort of draw our attention to, or in your research out there?
Well, first, I'm really glad that we did take this winding path, because this has been very informative for me. I've learned a great deal. I know that I'm your guest, but I feel that this has really been so informative for me, and I've actually been taking some notes while we go along. So anyway, having said that, I think that the most important thing, I mean, really the takeaway that I have in my book, I mean, it is basically, this is where this is the conclusion that I've drawn after all these years of research. And the book is very well documented, according to one independent reviewer. And I hope that your guests will consider picking up a copy, and just even all of those source citations might be very helpful. But I really believe that the beauty industry is really long overdue for makeup. And this is not just with the messaging, and I know that we didn't talk about this particular theme today, but when it comes to cosmetic product regulations and also truth in advertising laws. And I think really for real change to occur, I think it's really up to each one of us to reject those beauty brands that really devalue us in their messaging. Those that speak to us honestly and authentically can earn our allegiance. And I think for especially baby boomers, women over the age of 50, I think that to win us back, the beauty industry is going to just have to find a way to address our needs as they are today, not as they were 10 or 20 years ago. So I believe that that's pretty much the celebration of individuality, embracing the beauty and diversity and speaking to us honestly and authentically is the next I think that is really what I would like to communicate and leave your guests with today, that this is really the challenge that the beauty industry will need to meet, and some are and many aren't.
You know, and every movement needs a fight, you know, like every good movement, you've got sort of the, Oh, it was an amazing video that I watched yesterday with Maggie Kuhn of the Grey Panthers, and the pioneer in the fight against ageism. But like from this ageism movement, one could view that there are certain cosmetic companies that are the enemy, and I could see this movement potentially gaining steam around building awareness that the way that these beauty companies or the cosmetic surgery industry is communicating is a bad thing, and that could add fuel to the fire. Now, Donna has a comment that I want to get your insights on. And she says, as we learned yesterday from the old school ageism, ageism can be a problem that's based on privilege. Can Martha comment on what's apparently mostly white women being ageism activists? But I think also that there is very much a racial lines in this field as well. Did you discover any sort of insights in that in doing your research?
I found some. I did, and I document some of this in the book. But interestingly enough, this America is turning into more a mixed, multicultural, multiracial nation, and what we're seeing is Allure did a survey over 20 years ago, and the notion of what beauty is was Caucasian, blue-eyed, blonde, right? And then now it's more what is considered beautiful or attractive is actually someone we're seeing of an individual mixed race. So this seems to be cultural. Certainly, as a culture, we are redefining beauty, and I think that this is a great thing. But in terms of female white privilege and leading the anti-ageist movement, I can't speak to that because that was outside of my research, the areas that I researched.
Well, I'm glad. One of the cool things about these conversations is they're just thought-provoking. None of us have the answers, but I love the questions that people are asking and the insights that we gain, because I always have a great day after a conversation like this, because it fills my head with how can we change the world? How can we activate some of these ideas and challenges and wrongs that we are discussing on the conversation? I would say, though, that, and again, I haven't done the research, but just, my observation on beauty marketing is that it is a lot more interracial, probably more interracial, if that's a term, than intergenerational. So what I've noticed is on a lot of marketing and beauty is that where multiple races are represented in the advertising, and what you recognize there is that these companies have probably seen that they can be penalized by sort of spotlighting the blonde-haired, blue-eye model like they were, 15, 20 years ago. And I think if we could look at the age and beauty movement, is that wouldn't it be great if you began to see all these companies recognize that they need to represent all ages and differing types of definitions of beauty in their marketing as well?
Well, Steve, some companies are doing that, and I know your guests have heard of the Dove Real Beauty campaign, and they were really the first back in the early 2004, and they started this, and then now other beauty marketers have fallen suit, and that was based on exhaustive global research that looked at how women define beauty, and they discovered in those conversations that that women actually had tremendous dissatisfaction with their appearance, and they didn't feel that necessarily they were being brought into the conversation. So a lot of, if you think about the beauty industry, how do beauty brands actually promote their products? I mean, if we think about it, first they basically need to elicit a positive response from women by provoking an unpleasant emotional state, such as dissatisfaction or concern with their appearance, right? And so they'll tap into women's anxieties about appearance to do that. So now many companies are saying, well, yeah, we are going to show, and we are seeing this in advertising now, women as they are and who they are, to try to create messaging that is more relatable and realistic of the image of who women are. We're not all the same size, shape, and color and height and so forth. So this one size fits all attitude that we've seen in the past, some of that is breaking away as we're seeing now. And then you provided a very good example. We're beginning to see more diverse images in beauty messaging, addressing a lot of different women as they are, and young women and older women. And you will occasionally see an older woman in an ad, also with younger women, to appeal to a much broader audience.
Yeah, and I know you can't see this, but while you brought up the Dove Real Beauty, I did a quick Google search and brought up sort of the an image of their campaign on the screen, and you're right. I mean, this was a groundbreaking ad campaign. Nobody ever saw anything like this, and it really is. I really think did start a movement in the fashion industry. Now, it's interesting as I observe, and Dove is clearly an innovative company. It was never in the US, but they are the ones that did the campaign Gray Gorgeous Wrinkled Wonderful in the UK. It's interesting, the Dove Real Beauty ad doesn't have somebody with gray or silver hair who you could sort of say this person is a clearly visually an older adult. But yesterday we had an interesting discussion on hair color, okay? And one of the audience commented on how I was the only person on the 4 people on the screen with gray hair, and then that sort of led to dyeing your hair versus not dyeing your hair, and what does that mean? And in your book or in your research, did sort of the issue of coloring one's hair, has that ever become a topic or an issue?
I didn't specifically look at that particular issue, but interestingly enough, sort of this might be a side topic that sort of straddles across this, but I'm sure that some of your guests have heard of dyeing your hair. I actually find the language offensive, but it's the granny trend. So young women are making their hair silver, looking a silver gray. And it's been a trend in hair coloring. And that granny trend, I don't know why that descriptive language has to be used, but it's interesting to see that it's having silver hair is actually in now. But of course, that's young women wearing silver hair.
Well, yeah, but this came up yesterday actually, and I'm glad that we're talking about it. But we didn't have the label, and this is in theory, it's a positive thing for aging that young people would want to dye their hair gray. Okay, there's something good down there. That's I think, okay, but the fact that the label, you're right. The fact that you're calling it the granny trend, or you're sort of using language that might be anything, because nobody would call dyeing your red hair, you wouldn't, any other hair color, you wouldn't sort of align it with age, you're talking about your color. Hey, I love your silver hair. I love your white hair. I love your red hair, you know.
Right. They
But,
call it granny chic is another word for
granny
it. But the
chic.
word granny is very prominent in it. Yeah, that's another term you'll hear.
Georgiana says there has been a counter term, silver fox. Yeah, that's a lot more positive, I would say. You know, oh, you've got the silver fox look. You know, so, but anyways, but well, this has been a great discussion, Martha. I hope you get better. I'm sorry that we don't have you on face to face, but we will get you on again. Let's see. Stephanie Moore comments, our society needs to normalize the fact that many women are now their most beautiful in their 40s and 50s. Now, we also typically have more spending power too, so they need to look better to cater to us. I don't want to look like I'm 20 anymore. And very well said, Stephanie. And I think we've got to figure out a way to take that buying public and create a voice that says, look, I appreciate products and clothing and a variety of things that will make me feel better. But if you classify it as making me look younger, I'm not going to buy it, you know. And if we can sort of point this consumer group in that direction, it can affect a big change in the beauty and cosmetic industry. And we need to eliminate or change the name of the anti-aging industry as well.
Yes, all very nicely said. So, I absolutely agree with you. And it all begins with a conversation. It begins with awareness. And one of the goals of the book, a main goal was to raise awareness of many of the issues that we are discussing during this fantastic digital discussion with your guest.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being on. To everybody, we're recording this. I'll also turn this into a podcast, and let's keep this dialogue going. So Martha, keep us posted on what you're up to. And those of you in the audience today, if this triggers an idea for a future conversation or a different idea or a way to rally us in a direction to help eliminate ageism, by all means, reach out to me directly. But again, Martha, I hope you feel better, and we look forward to having you on again.
Oh, thank you, Steve. And thank you very much to you and your guests for having me. And I really learned a lot. I actually have a full page of notes. So thank you very much, everyone. And hope to see you all again. So until then.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.